Well, g'day YouTube. I just wanted to talk about piping on refrigeration systems, especially anything more than 10 years old. So, this cord here originally ran beside the liquid and suction lines on this fridge. And what it had was, every so often it had a big blob of tar oil down there to sort of keep the pipe work from moving around too much. Now what I've done, this had tar oil around here. Now what I've done is, this is just expansion joining foam from concrete. It's not done very well. I have to trim that off and make it look neat. But basically it's just torn into a strip about, I don't know, the width of the expansion joining, and I don't know, about an inch. I just wrapped it around the lines. This screw completely out, this screw most of the way out, and then did that. So it can't really move around too much. There's no metal on metal contact. So that's something else. And this one I haven't cleaned up either. I gotta trim this off, but I obviously can't do it with anything that's gonna damage these line sets. So that is the capillary tube / liquid line. You don't want to nick these guys. You want to really just trim this off without touching any of that. So just very carefully trim it off. But I wanted to talk about vibrating pipe work. This is why this got done, because this fridge used to make a gentle rattling sound. And so if I follow this line set down, where it goes to this part, there's two distinct lines basically. This is the suction line, and it goes to this big vibration elimination loop to the suction side of the compressor. And this is the capillary tube from the liquid line. Now we see that liquid line disappears there-ish. Now temporarily what I've done is actually pack that out. I've packed the line set out with some of that expansion joining tape. Now what we have is a bracket and a P-clip. I don't know if I can go further down to show you better. Now originally what they did was they wrapped this particular line in cardboard, and the screw on the bottom with a nut, it's a P-clip. So that was tightened up to be very tight around the line, no play, but it wasn't metal on metal contact. Now why this is important is because I try not to touch the compressor terminals, because this thing's actually hot. It's plugged in. You can see that this has come loose. So I did loosen off. I loosened this guy off here, but this line in this P-clip is actually loose. You can't see how it moves around there. Now that's really important. There's also one over here. This shows better what the other side of it would look like. And this is kind of the same. It's the cardboard's gone and it's loose. This is really important because when the compressor on one of these things runs, any refrigeration system, when it's running, the compressor's going, the pipework is moving around even if it doesn't look like it. So if I go to here, you can't really see a lot, but again, that's the liquid line. You can see how long it actually is. It's quite, if I go back here, this is actually quite a long line. So this stuff here isn't just random. You should be really careful about it. When you rewire one of these, still haven't hooked up my additional earth wire. I will. It's not critical. The unit didn't come with it, whatever. But just be aware, any of this stuff, and even, this is one of those strips of paper, by the way, cardboard. This was between the P-clip for the T-stat wiring. Now this is obviously far too long. I'm going to wrap that cable with insulating tape where it goes through the P-clip. I'm going to do the same exact thing for this liquid line, because all I want to do is take up the clearance in the P-clip. So basically, if I can get this phone in there, sorry, bear with me for a sec. Yeah, where the line goes through that P-clip in the center of the frame, it's loose. So see how loose it is? So I'm going to take out that screw that holds the P-clip assembly to the compressor frame, whatever, bracket, and then I'm going to take the P-clip off the line and wrap it with a fair bit of tape. So when I tighten the P-clip onto the pipe, there's not going to be any metal on metal contact, and it's going to be tight. But the same applies with the wiring. Now I've temporarily wrapped the compressor earth back over this. Now I got to do it the way it was done originally. It was kind of spiral wound around this. To do that, I've got to disconnect this cable from the compressor. But this was done to stop this cable from rubbing on any of these lines. Now, you might be thinking, but it's made of plastic. It's soft plastic even. Just this, like sitting on top of this, like that. Every time this compressor runs, it vibrates. You can't even see it moving because it's quite a decently fast vibration. But just that is eventually enough to wear through that copper line and the cable. One of them's going to come first, and you know it may not necessarily be this cable. You know, copper's quite soft and it wears through quite quickly. So all I do for the moment, this is just under test, by the way. That's why I haven't done any of the cables, made them short or whatever. I just kind of shove these out of the way. It's not really a lot you can do right now. I would like to get it completely out of the way, but not really going to happen. So I'm going to shorten this and make sure it's well out of the way of that pipework. And that's why, if I go back to the rear of this unit, it's not just randomly shoved there. So it actually had a loop kind of like this. And I don't like the way it's done. So this I'm just going to go tape over this, and basically I'm just going to tighten it tight against this cable. But I'm going to shorten the cable. I'm probably going to do it at the control box end. No, I'm definitely going to. I'm going to make sure it can't contact any of this pipework, sorry. Wiring, my brain's a bit fried. And same with this. This is not original. Originally it would have run here. But I'm going to run plastic P-clips from the electrical supply house. I mean, you know, I'll run a P-clip here. It'll be held on by this screw. I've got no reason not to do this. So P-clip there. I'll make sure it cannot touch this pipework. So that's what this is, if any of you guys are just starting out with fridges. So I don't know a lot about antique refrigeration. It's not something I've been into for all that long. I've sort of always had 50s fridges and things like that, even when I was a teenager. But the thing is, I'm very interested in just refrigeration in general. So this is something in the refrigeration world that's really well known. So anything that rubs on a pipe for any reason, you'll rub through that pipe eventually, and eventually, if you're unlucky, what will happen is, okay, if I take this for example, if this is just lying on this vibration loop, which vibrates the whole time the compressor's running, this is moving around ever so slightly, it'll rub through the copper almost all the way, then it'll get through this cable eventually, and because this is grounded, there'll be a big bang, especially if your house isn't RCD protected, and it will basically blast through the copper. So often you'll find a tripped breaker, and you'll think, oh, that's weird, and then there's a dead short because a cable's rubbed through. So just be aware of that, guys. It doesn't matter whether it's antique or not. I mean, units like this old weather wall, where they're 30, 40 years old. Actually, yeah, this thing's 40 years old, exactly, actually. You got to keep in mind that these are old, and the pipework and whatnot needs to be no pipework to pipework contact. So pipes rubbing each other out, or cable to pipework contact, or, you know, maybe there was a clip or something that's missing. If a pipework is vibrating and rubbing against something else, doesn't matter what it's made of, it will eventually rub through.